What B2B marketers can learn from B2B success. My name's Neil Wilkins and I would like to take you through a little introduction on this particular subject. Now, B2B marketers often feel as though they're following their business-to-consumer colleagues, particularly in terms of marketing innovation, some of the more creative and exciting branding and social media activities that go on, and particularly when it comes to the numbers. I mean, often overshadowed by their business-to-consumer colleagues, they can often feel the underlings in their organisation and often crave for some of the best practice that actually happens in the consumer world. But having said that, business-to-business marketers are in a really privileged position in terms of the amount of data and knowledge that they often have about their particular customers. Now, the difference really between business-to-business, B2B, and business-to-consumer, B2C, is that really what we're thinking of here is learning from the fact that what we're talking about here is communication between individuals rather than organisations. And this is what makes business-to-business marketing into a social business. Now, you've probably heard in the media recently a lot of people talking about this whole idea about being social businesses, and essentially social businesses are those who think that they market towards people in organisations rather than organisations themselves. And that is a really key thing, and that's probably one of the most fundamental things that we as business to consumer marketers give to our B2B colleagues. So in B2C world, the most social businesses are the ones enjoying the most growth. They're the ones who really are getting a clear understanding of the various differences, some of the subtleties behind their various consumer segments that they market to, and also they're capturing data. Big data. This is what it's all about. It's not just about the capturing of the data, but it's also about turning that data into intelligence. So for B2B marketers, they really have to think about what data do I need to capture, and actually what does that data really mean? What they're also doing is they're taking very seriously the whole of the marketing mix, from segmentation and building strategy, right the way through to generating great content and then measuring. And again, one of the big things that consumer marketers tend to do traditionally very well is measurement. What they'll be doing is they will be controlling their campaigns. They will be looking at their campaigns as to how those campaigns deliver really great return on investment right the way through to some of the strategic aims that they have. Often business-to-business marketers get dragged along in the latest tactical activities that sales are doing, or they're driven by product development and new product introduction rather than thinking about the full marketing mix. So if you're a B2B marketer, you need to be thinking about the full marketing mix from strategy through to measurement and proving return on investment. So what can B2B marketers learn from these successes of the best performing B2C companies? Well, the first thing is to set an appropriate strategy and some really smart objectives. By strategy, we're thinking about looking 3 years out. So look beyond this month, look beyond 6 months and even this tactical year. Really set some longer term objectives, and then everything you do then can be driven towards achieving those. Understand some of the nuances of your profiles of audiences, the different types of audiences, the different types of businesses that you're looking to market to, and really importantly, the different types of individuals within individual businesses. Because if you're talking to a finance manager, a finance director, they're going to have a very different language and be looking for very different things to if you're talking to your buyer, for example. Be thinking as well about the optimum content and the right digital marketing tools to deliver that content. It isn't all about just following the crowd and your competitors, it's about doing things right. Think also about how you're going to resource and fuel your marketing plan. It's all very well having great big grand strategies and marketing plans, but if you don't have the resources, the time, the money and the people behind them, the thing is not going to happen. And be thinking about continuous learning when you measure. And when you gather data, when you look at the outputs from the marketing activity, think about continuous learning. What can I learn this month that's going to make my work next month more effective? Because this is what business to consumer successful organisations are doing. So to set an appropriate strategy and objectives, what you're needing to do here is think about the various stages of the customer journey. Think about creating awareness, but it doesn't stop there, because you're then looking to acquire the most relevant customers who come through that awareness stage. So create awareness and then convert that awareness into a buying customer. But your journey doesn't stop there, because their journey won't stop, because having become a customer, what you're looking to then do is to retain them, so building loyalty. And again, that's another key thing that we can learn from consumer marketers. They build and retain loyalty. So start to plot every step in that journey, because again, this is a business organisation dealing with other businesses, different journeys for different people in different organisations. This is what you need to focus on. 3 steps in the journey: awareness, conversion and retention. Red Bull is a great consumer example at doing this, and they will take people in various segments through an entirely engaged customer journey. They'll be using a whole range of different tools, both online and offline, sponsorship, events, the whole gambit of marketing mix here. But for them, it's all about social inclusion, so really understanding and getting their customers, their consumers engaged with the brand. So if you're marketing to businesses or people in individual businesses, what you're looking to do here is to think about how can you get them feeling inclusive. So researching their needs, really delivering, but getting them to contribute, maybe, for instance, to your product development. Maybe get them involved in terms of strategic partnership. This is a really important way forward. And be very clear about who you are and why there's value in engaging with you. The what you do comes later. Some very, very sort of small players in, for instance, the big sort of financial services sector can be very, very professional and very, very profitable organisations. A great example is Bath Building Society. They don't hit and bat with the big players in terms of size, but in terms of quality, they know their customer, they know their capabilities, they know their resources. And that is a clear message that we can then pick up on and actually use ourselves. And also understand the nuances of your different profiles of audiences. You don't market to businesses, you market to real people with real names. So identify them and use those names and those personas that you develop to start to really understand the customer journeys that you're taking them on. Talk their language, understand them as real people. They don't just have a business persona. These are real individuals who lead real lives. And the more you can tap into those individuals, talk their language, understand what they do outside of work, think of them as real people, the more you will engage. The most successful consumer organisations are doing it this way. So as a B2B marketer, you can do this way too. For example, Amazon, great example of a B2C organisation who are looking for constant ongoing engagement. They understand what you like and what you've been looking about. And of course, it's all then about customerization, the consumerization and the customization of product and service so that it's very relevant and it's very current and it's very informed. So the more you can customize the offer that you have for individual organizations you're marketing to, and then within those organizations, the people who you're trying to engage with, talk their language, customize the experience for them. Do not be a one-size-fits-all, because successful consumer organizations don't do it that way. So make sure that you learn from that particular point. It's really important to understand your audience. And then you can start to populate the customer journeys with relevant marketing tools that are given job descriptions. So suddenly Twitter has a purpose to deliver a particular function and role on that customer journey. It's by really understanding these people at the heart of what they use, you can then start to customize their customer journeys based on the marketing tools that they are using. So if they're not using LinkedIn, why bother with LinkedIn? If they're in Facebook, start to communicate through Facebook. But it allows you then to use this kind of marketing practice as a filter. So you're not wasting time using tools and content that's not going to hit the mark. So by understanding them, you can then optimize your content and your digital marketing tools really, really accurately. Starbucks in consumer space is again past master at doing this. They've created Starbucks Coffee House, a Wi-Fi community where you can download apps, and it's a pure sort of engagement where they're looking then to provide added value for you as a consumer at the same time as you're giving them something back in terms of your buying patterns and the locations of coffee shops you use. So collecting big data, watching these patterns of this customer journey in reality, and then fine-tuning it, optimizing that engagement for both sides. This is very much a relationship experience, and that's the kind of marketing that you can be doing from a B2B perspective. And then, of course, fine-tuning your content. We call content the rule of thirds as the most effective means of actually consumer marketing content activity. You can do this in a business-to-business sense by understanding the personal engagement that is required to do great business. Most of the sales and marketing activity that you're going to be doing in a business-to-business sense comes from customer relationships. So they've got to get to know you. So a third of what you post should be personal, about getting to know you. One third can, of course, be the promotion. That's fine. You can do, overt selling through these kinds of tools. That's not a problem. But you do need to balance it with adding value, and we call that the pointing third. In other words, signposting relevant content that's outside of your organisation, but that adds value to the kinds of interests, the kinds of things that are driving your customers. And if, again, you can do that, you're talking their language, you're starting to build that relationship. Consumer organisations do this in a very powerful way. In a business-to-business sense, it still applies. It's still really important to do. So I'd strongly encourage you to do that. Similar sort of example where this works exceptionally well is in one of Europe's largest free festivals, the Bristol Harbour Festival, which happens every year. Their strategy is about optimization. They found that the most engagement that they wanted to get online was actually coming from a consumer's perspective from Facebook. Yes, they've got a Twitter account. Yes, they send newsletters out. Yes, they're in print as well. But it's through Facebook they get most of their interaction and engagement, because that's what the customer demanded. So rather than fight against that tide, engage it, embrace it, really work with it, do your research, understand which marketplaces are most aligned with which social networks, and then use those. Don't try and push against the tide, embrace it and ride with that flow of information. And then think about your resourcing. You've got to be able to fuel this marketing plan. Advocacy rules in this sense. So in B2B, advocacy is at least as important as in business to consumer. So what we're looking for here is helping the customers in a B2B sense to share the great experiences that you've given them. So case studies, testimonials, little reference sort of sound bites, maybe a video interaction with you interviewing a customer or a strategic partner. The more you can be seen to be interacting and sharing information and content collaboratively, that is the key thing here. It's about collaboration, the better. Okay, so the more advocacy you can inspire, the better your marketing activity is going to be. And of course, advocacy, where people are sharing on your behalf, means that they're marketing for you. So maybe then you can cut back on some of your internal resources and time, because your most loyal customers are actually marketing on your behalf. So advocacy really does rule here. And of course, what you can find as well is that one of the resources you have available to you are your staff, your employees, the people in the organisation. If you can get them to share on their own personal networks, well, as this one leading consumer packaged goods company noted, it could save 250 million in coupon distributions if they just simply got their employees to share coupons on their own personal networks. So, these are huge numbers. Maybe your numbers aren't going to be quite so impressive, but they still will be significant. Think about everyone in your organisation, who they know, who they can network with. And of course, your employees, in theory, should also become very, very powerful advocates, helping you to fuel your marketing plan. And of course, as part of this, in terms of support, think about the Apple support communities. Apple don't provide a huge amount of online support themselves. They allow their advocates, people who are tried and tested sort of Apple users, to actually service problem solving. So they have frequently asked questions, but then if those don't solve the problem for a particular consumer, they push the consumer out into the Apple support community, where other people just like them are able then to work with them to solve the problem. So think about what you might be able to do there. Maybe there's some kind of sort of forum or some kind of community that you could foster, maybe in LinkedIn, for example, or through Twitter, that actually allows your community of customers and partners to bond, but also to really embrace this whole collaborative social business way of working. It's a really powerful thing to do. And again, with content, it doesn't all have to be down to you. Content curation, crowdsourcing content, using your partners and your customers to help you build a great online resource of content that's for the benefit of all, for you, for them, and for your partners. Scoopit is a great example of this, and here's a little example that I run, digital marketing and social networking, curated content. It's a great way to become a social business. Yes, you'll want to put some of your own content in there, but keep it objective. Again, another fine way of using consumer-proven best practice for business-to-business marketing. And then ultimately, thinking about your dashboard. As I mentioned at the start, one of the great ways that business-to-consumer organisations do their marketing is that they measure everything. They look beyond Google Analytics to Crowdbooster, social mentions, social report, and a whole range of different other dashboards so that they can continuously fine-tune and learn from the data that's provided. Don't just look at data, look at what that data means. Interrogate your data and try and get to the heart of actually why was that data created? What were the outputs that created that data? And actually what can you learn from? Because what you're needing to do is do more of what works and strip out the stuff that doesn't. You will not get it right first time. You probably won't even get it right second or third time. But by continuously learning, you will get better and better and better. And this is what business-to-consumer organisations do. And of course, you can then use the concept in the future, potentially, this whole idea of cloud marketing, where we're going to be able to reignite our content and our media and the tools that we choose. Because if we're doing this right, the whole world is moving to this whole cloud technology sort of platform, if you like. And what we'll be able to do as business-to-business marketers in the future is embrace this kind of activity. So think about the content you're providing, because by starting today, you're future-proofing yourself for tomorrow. So your next steps, think about your personas. Remember, you don't market to businesses, you market to individuals within those businesses. Think about your customer journeys, prioritise those most important customers, and then start to choreograph the journeys that you give them. Assign marketing tools to perform particular functions at each of those three steps, the awareness, the conversion, and particularly importantly, the retention, where you're building loyalty. Think about the rule of thirds for personal engagement. If you want to become a social business, you've got to share a little bit about you. You've got to signpost to other interesting content. And yes, of course, you can then sell as well, but remember the rule of thirds. And keep an eye on the future. Make time for this stuff. Make time for learning, continuous improvement, because if you don't, you'll blink and it will be gone.